Call to order the regular meeting of the Mayor and Board of Trustees of the Village of Burr Ridge for July 22, 2019. We don't have our Pledge of Allegiance ladies here.
No.
They don't seem to be here yet. So I think we'll take a young lady from the audience. Mrs. Grasso, would you lead us?
Yes.
Former trustee Grasso, would you lead us in the pledge?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Yes. Very good. Do you want to do?
Need to call the roll.
We need to call it first. Okay. Roll call, please.
Trustee Francis.
Here.
Trustee Scalpa.
Here.
Trustee Pavesa.
Here.
Trustee Snyder.
Yes.
Trustee Mattal. Here. Trustee Model.
Present by phone.
Can you tell us the reason why you're by phone or using it?
Yes, I had a business conflict. It's a work issue.
Okay, so the item before the board would be to entertain a motion to allow Trustee Model to participate in the meeting by remote means.
First, let me make sure we have a quorum so that we can
Yes, sir.
now we can entertain such a motion. Okay.
So moved.
Do I have a
Need
second?
a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes.
Then I would say Mayor Grasso.
Here. Okay, there are no presentations or public hearings tonight. 4, the consent agenda. All items listed with an asterisk are considered routine by the village board and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a board member or citizen so requests, in which event the item will be removed from the consent agenda, discussed by the board, opened for public comment, and voted upon during this meeting. Minutes. 5B, receive and file draft of Pathway Commission minutes of July 11, 2019. 6, ordinances. B, approval of an ordinance amending Chapter 2, Article 11, Section 2.67 of the Burr Ridge Municipal Code regarding order of business, agenda for meetings of the Board of Trustees. 7, resolutions. Adoption of resolution approving an intergovernmental agreement between the Illinois State Toll Highway Authority and the Village of Burr Ridge for relocation of a 36-inch diameter water main adjacent to and under the tollway's mile-long bridge. 7B, adoption of resolution approving a license amendment with the Forest Preserve District of Cook County. 8, considerations. C, approval of recommendation to award contract for the 2019 water main replacement project to Chechen Plumbing and Heating, Inc. of Bloomingdale, Illinois, in the amount of $1,030,143. I like the first number better, but that's the more accurate one. D, approval of request for raffle license for aging care connections and hosting facility license for Chicago Marriott Southwest at Burr Ridge for a fundraising event on September 13th, 2019. E, receive and file letter of resignation of part-time general utility 1 worker Connor Rich. F, approval of recommendation for Public Works Director to fill the vacancy of part-time general utility 1 worker created by the resignation of Connor Rich. G, approval of recommendation to approve temporary sign placements requested by the Burr Ridge Park District Foundation for the Pedal the Parks event on Sunday, September 8, 2019. And H, approval of vendor list dated July 22, 2019 in the amount of $469,940.16 for all funds, plus $205,490.22 for payroll, for a grand total of $675,300.38. Check my math on that, please. which includes no special expenditures. Can I have a motion for the following items on the consent agenda? Item 5B, 6B, 7A and B, 8, C, D, E, F, G, and H.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
That passes. So that takes us to minutes. 5A, consideration of regular board meeting of July 8, 2019. I asked, and Trustee Francis and I both wanted this on the agenda to make it clear that when the vote came up for Mayor Pro Tem, we did it by voice vote, and we want to make the record clear that Trustee Francis did in fact abstain, as would be appropriate, since he was the subject of the motion. So now, with that clarification, can I get a motion to approve the regular board minutes of the meeting of July 8, 2019?
So moved. Second.
Joe got the second there. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes. Okay, 6A, consideration of an ordinance amending Article 2 of the Burr Ridge Building Ordinance to adapt an expedited residential and commercial permit and expedited fee schedule. Doug?
Yes, thank you. I'd like to have Assistant Village Administrator Evan Walter present this recommendation.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Village Administrator. As stated, this is item 6A on your agenda. This is a request to establish fees for expedited plan reviews of building permits in the building ordinance currently. This request was brought forward by a developer within our community that has requested the village consider additional ways to find methods for reviewing residential building permits on an expedited basis. We've been discussing with this developer for some months about methods on how to do this. Recently, they made an official request that we look at this. So taking that request, staff looked at our current staffing procedures, our review procedures, and we found a method for establishing an expedited permit schedule. So in basic terms, an expedited permit means that for an additional fee, a permit applicant could move to the front of the line on the basis of reviewing their permit. So currently, when permits come in, we review them on a first-come, first-served basis. So if your permit comes in on Monday, we'll review it in the order versus when your permit came in on Thursday. So as they come in, we review those in the order that we receive them here at our village hall. So under current policy, we prioritize these plan reviews as such. Plan reviews take 14 business days for the first review, 10 business days for all subsequent reviews. So if you have 3 reviews, it'll take 14 days for the first, and then 10 business days for the second and third. And at that point, a permit would be issued, subject to compliance with all of our rules and regulations. An expedited review would be completed in 5 business days for the first, and all subsequent reviews would be enacted. So for that extra fee, for the first review, they'd be taking it from 14 days to 5 business days, and all the subsequent reviews from 10 days to 5 days. So again, 5 and 5 all throughout. The reason for this is pretty much to save time during the staff review, especially on the commercial side. These things could take 3 or 4 reviews, especially considering how complex they are. Sometimes paying the extra amount of money is worth it to a developer or someone moving into a new business who is constrained by a lease agreement, or there's some sort of deadline that they're very much held to. The additional need for the fee is to ensure that we can pay for additional help that we may need. We're a lean staff here at the Village Hall. We outsource a lot of our reviews to engineering firms or architectural firms, but it's also for the fact that you would be in effect skipping some of the additional permits that came in front of you. So as a result of that, that additional fee would be pretty much for that privilege. The draft amendment before you would set an expedited commercial fee at 250% of the normal review fee for commercial permits and 150% of normal permit reviews for a residential permit. The reason for the discrepancy in price is due to the fact that commercial permits do take longer to review. They take a bit more time to review just because they are more complex. They require more codes to look at, and they're generally larger in scope. So you take a 100,000 square foot building versus a 5,000 square foot home. The one larger building is necessarily going to take more manpower to review. And so thus those costs are passed along to us by our commercial consultant, and thus requires a higher review cost. Just for example, just for the record, by 150% of a residential fee, if the example permit costs $5,000, an expedited permit would cost $7,500. So it'd be approximately 1.5 times the standard home review permit time. While the reviews, if it were established, an expedited review would be returned to an applicant in a shorter amount of time, we'd still be requiring all the same documents we need. We need a site plan, we need a grading plan, we need all the engineering plans in front of us, we need a foundation plan, we need architectural elevations. We would simply be reviewing those in a much faster fashion than we normally do for a standard permit. So there's no cutting corners, there's no a light permit or whatever. There's still the same standard that we have to pass for a normal permit if an expedited permit were to come through to us. So in effect, what this does is it would establish a fee schedule within the building ordinance that states that the village shall be charging an additional rate for an expedited fee review on both the commercial and the residential side. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them at this time.
Any questions?
No.
Yes.
I know that we work efficiently and effectively, but what happens if we miss the deadline?
Certainly, there's always the chance that we could. That is kind of part of it. However, we've reviewed our permits. We haven't missed a permit review in quite a long time. There hasn't really been an example of that I could find in the past few years. We understand that service levels, especially on permits regarding development, are extremely important, and to stick to those is really a promise on the village, and to break those are really something we try to never do. Especially on the expedited side, some of that money will be used to hire or at least bring on a consulting firm if needed for an engineering project, or just simply pay additional monies to our consultants who may need additional manpower themselves. So we don't foresee us having any issues with meeting that service level. We chose 5 days very specifically because we felt we could hit it every single time, but there always is that chance in a rare case that yes, we could miss that timeline.
And if someone paid for an expedited review and we failed to meet the deadline, we'd give them their money back.
Yeah, of course.
The surcharge.
But I don't anticipate that ever.
Surcharge.
The surcharge, not.
The surcharge,
Yeah.
right.
Question of equality. So do you end up, if someone wants the expedited process, what is the explanation for the other people waiting in line for their permits? How do we justify that? I hope the answer isn't just because we want the money.
No. Generally, our policy being, let's just take 14 days as our initial example. Our policy is always to try to get back to them much ahead of time of that. So if it's a 14-day return, we try to get it back in 10 days. If it's a 10-day return, we try to get it back in 7. So if we were to move one permit in front of them, it might go from 10 to 11 days. There's never really necessarily a chance that we go from 13 to 14 or 14 to 15. Most of the time, a permit applicant is not really aware that it may take one extra day during the allotted time frame. So certainly we want to always be aware of the timelines that we're granting ourselves to get a service done for the community. So yes, that would be a real consideration as to somebody would be theoretically skipping in front of the line for an extra fee. Certainly.
Well, and that, therefore, I think that when somebody applies for the surcharge and the special permit, expedited permit, that there be a look back to see who's next in queue to make sure we're not being unfair to that person or that business.
Of course.
Right?
Yes, absolutely. I think the extra money, if we anticipate that it's going to delay anyone beyond normal turnaround time, we'd be hiring a consultant to help us use that extra money. Be our goal that everyone else still gets their permits on time.
Do you want?
Any questions? Yes. Again, we're asking staff to do more with less, and I have a concern about that. Is the 14-day permit application timeline, is that a problem for a lot of developers, permit applicants?
Most developers know.
No.
Sometimes you get a permit applicant who has a bulk of permits, such as the developer who had requested this. And in those cases, 2 weeks may be more meaningful to them than other developers. So 20 versus 1, but no, not usually, no.
Was this a commercial developer or a residential developer that brought this issue up?
Residential.
And are the fees that we're asking, the surcharges we're asking, are those in line with other villages that have this policy?
It's generally in the middle, yeah. We're in the middle,
Right in the middle.
yes.
Is it enough?
It's up to you.
It's up to us.
Well,
We're
I
going
think
on
that's a fair
recommendation.
question.
I just didn't hear your follow-up.
We're going on your recommendation of 150% and 275%.
So based on our budget analysis, we figure that about half of the additional permit fee would be going to an additional consultant where
Okay.
needed. So in the cases where we don't need an additional consultant, the village would be getting about, as I said, about $2,500 additional dollars.
Okay.
For one permits review work, we felt like that was an appropriate amount of additional incentive / reward for the village to receive for an additional premium level of service.
Very good, thank you.
Anyone else?
Have you had a lot of requests for, like, the expedited service? Is that what brought this about?
More so on the commercial side,
Okay.
but we're seeing a little bit more on the subdivision side for residential development.
And it's justifiable, because then they make money faster too, because if they get their permit quicker.
Yeah, it allows them to keep their trades.
Right.
You know, if you're putting up a number of homes and you don't have anything for somebody to do for 3 days and you
Right.
lose them, it could be a long time before you get that trade back. So it allows them to keep the work going, and allows them to make the village to be more customer service and business friendly.
I think that's all the questions. Can I get a motion to amend Article 2 of the Burr Ridge Building Ordinance to adopt an expedited residential and commercial permit and expedited fee schedule as discussed?
So move.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Trustee Matal?
Yes.
Trustee Snyder?
Yes.
Trustee Baveza?
Yes.
Trustee Scapa?
Yes.
Trustee Francis?
Yes?
Trustee Model?
Yes.
6-0.
6-0, the motion passes. Okay, that takes us to considerations 8A, an update regarding stereogenics in Willowbrook, Illinois.
Thank you, Mayor. As I think everyone knows by now, on July 17th, the Attorney General and the DuPage State's Attorney announced that they have agreed to a settlement regarding the pending stereogenics litigation. The settlement would allow stereogenics to proceed with their permit application with the Illinois EPA, with the potential that if that permit application is approved, they would be allowed to reopen one of their 2 buildings in Willowbrook. The permit application does include retrofitting the building to comply with the recently adopted legislation in the state of Illinois. The DuPage County Circuit Court will consider this agreement at a hearing scheduled for July 24th at 1 p.m. at the DuPage County Courthouse. And at that time, we assume that the court will accept that agreement, but that's to be decided again on July 24th. Also, the Illinois EPA will be holding its public hearing regarding the stereogenics permit application on August 1st, 2019. It's a week from Thursday at 6 p.m. at Ashton Place in Willowbrook on 75th Street. We have advertised that meeting date on our website and on our social media. We did receive a suggestion from a resident to do a mailer. Not sure how practical that is given the shortness of time and the amount of work that's necessary to do a mailer. Another suggestion might be to use our advertising signs in the village for such a purpose, or other suggestions for getting the word out on that August 1st public meeting date, again at Ashton Place in Willowbrook. I believe that brings us up to date on what's been going on the last 2 weeks with the stereogenics issue. I'd be happy to answer any questions. Or
Let's start with the board first. Anybody have any questions or comments? Yes, Al.
A comment I had, I've read several articles in the last week, 10 days about the settlement that the stereogenics got. And the thing that bothers me the most is I read somewhere that there's no liability for them of what's happened in the past. And in all the articles I read, I saw nothing about the reason for putting that thing in the settlement. And that's almost, if there's no argument or no reason, it looks like a political gift of some type. I mean, to absolve them of all liability past is ridiculous. We still don't know problems that 20-some years of ethylene glycol, has contributed to the neighborhoods.
You are correct that the proposed consent decree includes provisions that would define no fault as to stereogenics. It doesn't absolve them, there'll be civil lawsuits, but from an EPA standpoint, and a state standpoint, and a county standpoint, the plaintiffs in the case, that consent decree allows stereogenics to walk, if you will, with no fault. You are correct. Anyone else? I have a few comments, but I want the board to go first. Go ahead, Tony.
Right. I was out of town. I came back and to this disappointing news that our state officials failed us. Very upset by the fact that they settled. I think ethylene oxide is a carcinogen that doesn't belong in our air. I ran into Mayor Trilla yesterday outside the church, and he was visibly upset by the settlement as well. And I know with Trustee Francis, who's chairman of our Environmental Quality Committee, we're going to work with our committee to exercise other options on what to do next. And so I'm very disheartened by what our state officials did. I mean, we just take it a step up federally.
Anyone else? Yes, Trustee Francis.
I agree with Trustee Scott. Our officials have let us down. And now the finger pointing has started between the governor and the Senate president. It's disappointing. It really is, when we had bipartisan support up till now. And now the finger pointing has started. This is terribly disheartening. I personally am reviewing the permit application, looking for holes that I could find to throw rocks at it. So when August 1st comes around and we have the opportunity to speak, I'll make commentary on that. But it's very disturbing. And anyway, so we're going to continue to work hard, continue to press on. If you can make the hearing on Thursday at DuPage County Courthouse in Wheaton, please do. If you can make the public hearing for the construction permit on August 1st at Ashton Place, please ask the residents to come out and show support and speak and share your opinions. Thank you.
Anyone else?
It's very disappointing and disheartening. I was really taken aback because we thought that the plant was shut down for a while, and this is very upsetting because there is a very high incidence of cancer in the whole Willowbrook area. I personally have a few friends who have cancer, and a couple of them passed due to that as well. So I really feel that as residents in this area, we're like being gassed and we have no choice. And that's very sad. And I mean, even if there's 1% correlation that stereogenics is leading to a higher incidence of cancer amongst the residents, then it does not belong in our neighborhood. And as residents, we should have that vote. And we should not allow it to start producing ETO and harm the residents.
Joe?
Well, I appreciate what Trustee Francis and the committee has done so far, and it is disappointing, and I can only hope that their guidance and good luck, maybe we can find something else to slow it down, because it's the government as usual. Put it up there, it's been going on for months, left us hanging dry at the very end, and with no, as Trustee Prevega said, no liability. Very disappointing.
I have some comments, and I believe some people in the audience have some comments, and we'll do that. Let me make several observations. First of all, Judge Fullerton still has before him Burr Ridge's petition to intervene. We have still not been granted the right to be a party plaintiff in this case, and that petition is still pending, and hopefully he will hear it on the 24th at 1 o'clock or 1:30. I'm not quite sure which time. It is important, in my opinion, that that be granted. We have spoken to our attorneys about that. And oh, by the way, our attorneys are with us. They are not involved in this consent decree. So we've asked our attorneys, the Storino firm, to make sure that our petition to intervene will be heard by the court. Now, we can't make the judge rule on it, but I think it's important that we ask him to rule on it so that we're a party. Once he rules on that, and hopefully makes us a party to the case, then we're even in a better position to object to this consent decree, which is what we are trying to do, so that hopefully it is not approved on the 24th. Don't forget, well, maybe you don't even know, our attorneys and the Village of Burr Ridge and Willowbrook and Hinsdale and Darien did not find out about this consent decree until 11 hours before it had already been announced, and we had it for 11 hours before basically it was being presented to the court and filed with the court system. Even the judge hadn't seen it before we were in court last week. So this not only doesn't smell right to me, not only does it look like this becomes a win for Sterigenics because it comes out no fault, it is going to contribute a measly $300,000 to community projects. It is my opinion that we should stand strongly against this. There can be no consent decree, no opening of Sterigenics, no way. And we need all of you to show up in the courtroom next, it's Wednesday or Thursday, 24th?
The 24th.
24th at 1 o'clock, and let the judge know that this is wrong. And we need to be able to contest this consent decree.
Did I say Thursday?
Our legislators are going to go back, as we understand it. Trustee Francis has pointed out that there's now finger pointing between the governor and House Leader Durkin. The fingers should be pointed directly at Sterigenics, not at each other. Not only is Sterigenics getting away, they're now focusing the discussion not on Sterigenics, but on the politicians and other people. We've got to get it back to Sterigenics, so please show up next week. Our attorneys are fighting for us. They did not know about this, and so we really have to look at the Attorney General and wonder why the Attorney General is going down this road. I haven't gotten a full explanation for that yet. I know everybody's, Mayor Trilla and everyone else is still looking for that. So please, we are still going to continue to fight this as hard as we can. Does anybody else in the audience want to address this topic? Yes, you must come up and identify yourself.
Thank you. I'm Janet Ryan Grasso, wife of the mayor and former trustee. I live at 6030 South Grant in Burr Ridge. Mr. Mayor, forgive me for correcting you, but you said that the court proceeding was next week. I think it is this Wednesday.
Yes, I'm sorry, I meant next Wednesday. Thank you. Thank you.
And I said it was Thursday, I meant to say Wednesday. It's Thursday, August 1st for the Illinois EPA public
Right.
hearing on the construction permit. I apologize.
It is the 24th of July, this Wednesday at 1 o'clock.
Thank you.
In courtroom 2007 in the DuPage County Courthouse. Thank you, former trustee. Yes, come on up and identify yourself.
My name is Vince Headington. I live in the Carriageway subdivision. And Mayor Grasso and the Board of Trustees, I'm glad to hear that you seem to be unified in your opposition to Sterigenics, the settlement agreement. And I can tell you that as a resident of Burr Ridge for 27 years, and currently on the board of Carriageway, there is an incredible sentiment in support of opposition to Sterigenics. I am speaking here for myself On the other hand, this is something where we're not trying to put Sterigenics out of business. We just don't want it as a neighbor. And they've got to be a good neighbor if they're going to be a neighbor. And any kind of emission from a known carcinogen is just not to be permitted. So I support and encourage you to take the steps that need to be taken to get Sterigenics out of our neighborhood. Thank you.
Anyone else? Please come up.
He belongs to me. I'm Mo Headington, 6760 County Line Lane and Carriageway Subdivision. Some of you have heard this before because I was rather outspoken at some of the Environmental Quality Commission meetings, but at the risk of anybody having missed my diatribe on toxics in this community, I will tell you this is not the first time we have been faced with something like this. And in the 27 years we have been here, there are, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, there are 6 different initiatives that I personally was involved with. Except for Al Paveza, I know that you came to my home on that very first issue when we were told, and that was when Bud Coglanese was the mayor, that our water, when we'd use our faucets, take a shower, was running brown. We didn't know why. And when you call the village, you'd hear take shorter showers and don't water your lawn. To me, that wasn't an answer. The real problem here is that Burr Ridge, when we bought our home the year before, we were told it was Lake Michigan water. Well, it was for some or most people in Burr Ridge. After the well water was siphoned off on our community, and I learned where the village wells were. What do you do about something like this? I went to the village, heart pounding, because I had been the queen of 7-year-olds teaching in Chicago's inner city before the village elders, although you don't look so old anymore. It was an amazing experience, and what I did is I got a neighbor in our subdivision. My husband's an attorney. I said, I want to do this so we don't get in trouble. Here's what I wanted to say, create a paragraph or 2 that nobody come back to bite us. And Karen Venori and I went out in August. It was over 100 degrees that August, door to door to door to door. I came to the Burr Ridge Village Hall, and Howard Heil was then the department, whatever, of water, and Howard did a little experiment. He put our groundwater, he threw some tablet in, and it was turned clear. And I said, well, how does that help us? Residents of Burr Ridge were buying water for all of their consumption. Anything that you drank, it had to be bottled water. Most of them, if they belonged to clubs, took their showers elsewhere. I don't belong to a club, so I just held my breath when I showered. The fact is that when I went before the board and tried to get people to come, because grown people don't like to speak publicly, I learned that. Mo, I'll come if I don't have to talk. I said, don't worry, you won't have to talk. And so I made my pitch on this, and I submitted 500 signatures of Burr Ridge residents who said, turn off the village wells. I did my homework before I did this. I had Al Paveza and Needham, I forget his first name. Tom Needham. I invited them both to my home, but what I did is I did a survey of all the adjacent towns to ours. We seemed to be the only ones that didn't get onto the Water Commission back when they were able to do it more cheaply. So what did we do? We got Lake Michigan water supplemented by wells. The fact is that we needed something done. And I talked to these 2 gentlemen because I didn't want to go to the board and not feel that I had some level of support before I spoke. And you know, those village wells were closed the next day. And Burr Ridge went out and they got another water source, I think it was Bedford Park. And we have so much water that we were selling it to unincorporated areas. So that was a lesson to me. I had never done anything environmental before. I didn't particularly want to go back to doing more of it. But I also had in my pocket another 500 signatories in case that first 500 didn't do the job. And if people who were in other parts of Ridge that were just getting the Lake Michigan water said, well, I said, how is your water? Ours is fine. I said, know that a mile or two away, ours isn't. And most people would still sign it. They'd say, come back later and get my husband. So I learned something about activism and about pushing back at the powers that be. I don't care who they are. I don't care what office they hold. And I wasn't looking for accolades. I was just happy to be able to take a shower and not hold my breath. But a few years later, something bigger than Sterigenics took seed in McCook, and that was that it was either 31 or 34 permits were being given because Illinois, let's face it, we lived in a state that has a history of corruption, always has, always will. And Illinois had a subsidy. If you're in the trash business, come to Illinois. We'll give you a taxpayer subsidy for 15 to 20 million per year and guarantee it for the next 20 years. Well, they were flocking here. And Illinois EPA was giving out permits like candy. When I learned of this thing, 30 some odd were already within the permit process. What to do? I didn't have an organization, but I had some people who were hard workers, and one is Lorene Dunn Silver, who ultimately ended up being Chris Redonio's campaign manager when she ran for the Senate the first time. And Mike Turlick, and bless him, he's gone, but he lived in Lyons. And we met, and we started going to our elected officials, and I told Steve Stricker about this. And Steve was an amazing ally. When I came to the village board with it, what I heard was, not in our municipality, nothing we could do about it. I said, but it's our health and property values, because I started doing research on toxic waste incinerators. And I called a friend in California who said, Mo, you gotta get rid of it, those are bad news. I quit my job for a year and a half to fight the incinerators. It just became such a challenge. Bottom line, not only going town to town, but I came and Burridge sent me away, so I said, Vinnie, we have no choice. We've got to do this ourselves. And we put out a mailer, which there were a few sympathetic people on the board at that time, and I won't say who it was, but one of them contacted me and said, I can get you the labels for every home and business in Burridge. I said, that's what I need, because that's what I wanted Burridge to do, is send out a mailing to every home and business, tell them what's going on, and let's start speaking up on this. So we wrote and wrote from Friday to Sunday. Again, I don't write anything without him looking at it. And I went to the Hinsdale post office and I said I need 3,600 stamps for something that's 5-sided. They waited, and the post office agreed to come to my home daily with trays. I made calls until I was blue in the face. One printer in Burridge said, honey, don't make any more calls. I'll do it for free. He ran 50,000 pages for me. I got 5 neighbors in. We collated these things. I put it out in into the mail. Then the press started. And it became such that I had to keep talking points on my desk at home, because the press is always looking for news. Do you have anything new for us today, Mo? Suburban life and the doings. The point is that Steve called me about 3 weeks after I had sent this big mailing. It cost us $1,200 or $1,300 to do it, but I felt somebody's got to do this. If the village isn't gonna, we have to. Well, lo and behold, people started paying attention. It was an amazing experience. The bottom line is that after we did this, Steve calls me 3 weeks later and he said, Mo, you're right. I went to the northeast corner of Burridge and I drove the drive. It is only 3 miles from us. We want to send out a mailing. I'm going, now you said something. But Burridge sent out a mailer to every home and business. And we got LaGrange involved, and Lyons involved, and other towns involved. And the point is that it took over a year, but we took on the trash industry, which is rich and powerful. The only one that got away from us in this whole incident was the one that was built in Robbins. That was one of the first. Foster Wheeler did that one. I called the reps in Robbins and I chastised them. Do you realize that there are schools within a block? In some of this whole arena, regardless of what the toxic is, it's always about where are residences and where are schools. He said he admitted to me that he voted wrong. I mean, these people are like sheep. They're so tied in politically with one another that they will. When I researched the campaign giving, somebody would sell his soul for $500.
Yeah. Can you wrap it up a little bit more?
Yeah, I will. And I didn't mean to take up time,
No,
but I
it's
feel like when I go to these meetings, and I remember you lead a wonderful meeting. I really just wanted to go and listen. But I couldn't contain myself because I wasn't hearing a level of activism that I think is required in this that will scare the biggest politician. And in that case, it was Jim Edgar. He was our target. And, I sent him things, but I got it on to Chicago tonight. I am going to be I tried to today, contacting Chicago tonight. They did the story. We have to make this bigger than here. And Jim Edgar, we were amazingly successful. Other groups got on. There were environmental groups like Lung Association, who I want to get involved in this, Sierra Club, but they have memberships. We went to the public. Kids at the train station passed out our flyers. I would get a call from the Board of Trade. Our entire division just sent down a letter to the governor. And lo and behold, we got our legislation passed. The biggest ally in it was Carl Legant, the mayor of Countryside. He was taking out full-page ads every week in the local press. He said, I'll spend our last dime advertising against this. So my point is, I think there's a lot we can do. I know that inspired me so to be a part of that movement. This was written up in an East Coast publication. They mentioned, when he says it, his voice cracks, that Lorene Silver, Chris Redonio, and I led an environmental movement that was the most successful anti-incinerator campaign in the country. And when we went down to Springfield, because our bill passed, we passed out flyers with everybody's name and number. My problem with Stop Sterigenics is when I looked at their website 2 days ago, there was a T-shirt saying we're getting more T-shirts. And going, why isn't the governor's name there with his phone number? And off to the side, call the governor and the AG. Where are the phone numbers? You have to make it easy. The governor's senior advisor, Al Grosbo, because Lorene and I were invited down for bill review, and they went around the table and asked everyone, who are they? I also spent $17,000 on ads that were $30 a minute for the stations in Springfield. That helped us a lot too. My point is that there is a lot that can be done. I'm not saying it would be done the same way, but I hate to go down not fighting. And when the governor the governor's advisor went around the table and asked the names of the organizations, he got to us. I said, Citizens for Clean Air and Water, for lack of a better name. He said, oh, you're those people. And then I said, could you tell me how many phone calls, faxes, emails the governor got? Do you keep track? He said, oh, yes. I said, I'd like a number. He gave me one. It didn't make sense to me. So I said, okay. And he went on, your people, you could call them off because the governor got your message. And if we can't use our phones, our faxes, our emails, he said, we can't run our business.
Right.
And that's what we need to do here. And you decide who your target should be. Personally, I think we target the governor.
All right. Thank you for that.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Come on up.
Microphone.
We can.
We'll get to the microphone. We'll get to the microphone.
Oh, one cookie.
Yes.
As a result of that, I was asked to be a director on the board of the Illinois Environmental Council, which I served for 6 years, and also was the vice president the last 2 times.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name's Richard Morton, Lake Ridge Club. I'm usually not searching for words, but the consent decree has really lost many words for me. I come up with words like disappointed and deflated, sad and angry. The manner in which it took place in secret, I don't think has any place in a public forum, and I believe Mr. Berlin and Mr. Raoul and Mr. Kim need to answer for that. And to what extent you can get that answer, I would hope you could try. While I may be sad and disappointed, I will not retreat. And I will continue to be making this an issue for myself, my family, and my community. Concerning the consent decree, it really doesn't address background levels of ethylene oxide that we know persist beyond closing Sterigenics. And they are dangerous levels of ethylene oxide. And I think at the very least, the state, as you like to say, Environmental Protection Agency, must make that a priority, and that should be researched and resolved before considering allowing Sterigenics to emit 1 more pound into our atmosphere, making our condition worse. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, come on up.
Hi there, Jen McConaughey, 475 87th Street. I wasn't planning on speaking tonight, so forgive me if it's a little disjointed. A question of clarification for myself. Does Judge Fullerton, is he going to make a decision, if he makes a decision on the consent order first, that automatically removes Burridge from being able to join a lawsuit?
He certainly procedurally could take up that issue, and he could, in my opinion, say that our petition is therefore moot.
And so then Burridge loses that opportunity entirely?
Could in that moment, doesn't mean we don't have other options.
Okay, I guess I would hope that those things are explored.
Oh, all options, believe me. And this, I've made it clear to our staff and our attorneys. I think this board has made it very clear where it stands. We are all united in this. They want me to do what I'm doing. They want this fought. They want to oppose this consent decree, and that's what Burridge is going to do.
Great, thank you. And I just wanted to say to Mo that I'm part of the Stop Sterigenics.
And I support you. I signed your
group. Yes, and thank you.
I signed it because of you.
And I appreciate your support and your involvement. And I just wanted to, reassure the community that as of today, I think there's 7,400 people on Facebook, which has been probably our most successful platform to spread our message, get people involved. And I would say over the past few days, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of calls and emails are going out to Governor Pritzker, Bob Berlin, and there's generally a focused area where we need some action. So I think Burridge, Willowbrook, Hinsdale, and beyond. We have people now from Georgia contacting us because they just found out they have a Sterigenics in their backyard. So we have been getting national attention, certainly state attention, local attention. So it's a very strong movement, and people are pretty amazed with how much progress we have made thus far. Certainly, we have a lot more work to do, but I just wanted to reassure you that there is a lot of attention going on in the communities on this issue. But I'd be happy to connect with you again and get your advice, because we have a wealth of experience. Yeah, certainly.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Jen, for all of your hard work.
Yes, absolutely. Anyone else? All right, so I think we've had a nice discussion about that. I think the board is united. Please show up on Wednesday. And this will remain on our agenda. We will remain being vigilant on this topic to stop Sterigenics from ever opening again. Yes. Sure. Just because of the TV and others that want to see your face again and hear you,
if there has been, since a settlement has been made, is there actually going to be a hearing on Wednesday?
I wish I knew the answer to that. I would hope that Judge Fullerton would at least let the lawyers be heard. I don't think it's scheduled for an evidentiary hearing, if that's what you're speaking about. So I don't think there'll be testimony taken. We have urged the lawyers to try to do that, not this Wednesday, but have a process where this stays alive, where we can continue to contest this and really hold Sterigenics to the evidence and not slip through with this consent decree. I don't think there'll be an evidentiary hearing. I'm hopeful he'll let the lawyer speak, and I'm hopeful that he starts out by granting us permission to intervene.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move on. 8B, update and discussion regarding the State of Illinois Cannabis Regulation and Tax Act. I asked Doug to put this on the agenda just to start the conversation. This act becomes law in January. It will be legal in Illinois. We have to see if businesses want to come to Illinois, to Burridge to open up a dispensary, or if there's acreage for a cultivation center. And so I just want the topic to get on the agenda and to start discussion. And also want the public to start weighing in. And if people have opinions on whether or not these businesses should be allowed and where they should be, we want to hear it. Villages can opt out of allowing dispensaries and cultivation centers. And so that's why I wanted to start the discussion. Other than that, Doug, do you want to update us a little bit?
Well, I think you hit on the highlights. The Cannabis Regulation and Tax Act was approved by the state of Illinois on June 25th. The law permits the cultivation, sales, and use of recreational cannabis throughout the state of Illinois, with no exceptions. Although local governments, such as the village of Burridge and every other municipality in the state, has the option of allowing a business in town or not. We do not have the option of prohibiting cannabis use, but we can say no to, or yes, to a legal licensed cannabis business, licensed by the state of Illinois. That means either a cultivation facility, smoking lounge, or a retail store business. You could say you can say yes to one, no to the others. We can pick and choose what type of business we would allow or not allow in the village of Burridge. That is the primary issue to be addressed by every village in Illinois. Every municipality is whether to opt in or opt out. As I have said before, if you're going to opt out, then we would simply pass an ordinance saying that the village of Burridge opts out and prohibits these businesses. If we're going to opt in, we would need to amend the zoning ordinance to classify the various types of cannabis businesses and to decide which districts they're permitted, which districts they may be special uses, etc. There is, and I have to mention it, although I'm sure the board would agree it's not the only factor to be considered, but people need to know that there's sales tax dollars involved in this, and they are significant. Talking to colleagues in other villages and doing the research, it's estimated that a single cannabis retail store would probably conservatively do $10 million in business a year, which with the 3% sales tax that a local government can impose, plus our normal sales taxes that we would impose or any other village would impose, that could be $400,000, $500,000 a year in revenue, sales tax revenue for villages. So that needs to be, people need to be aware of that. Again, there's a lot of factors that are going into your decision making, But that's kind of the basis. There'll be other things that the village has to do in terms of our personnel policies, our police training, et cetera. Those will be dealt with. But again, the primary question for the community to decide and the board is whether to opt out or opt in on allowing businesses.
So again, we're not making any decisions tonight, we're just starting the discussion. So if any of the board members have any comments or questions that we might be able to answer tonight, or at least get answers to, this is the forum to start that. Yes, Jim?
Doug, you said that you reached out to some of the other villages or communities. Anyone local that are already opting in to this particular plan?
I have not heard from any of our neighbors yet. I know Naperville opted out. I know, and maybe Evan has some more updates on other villages.
So I've called about 20 villages on this. Villa Park has already opted in officially. They've gone
Could you speak up, please?
I'm sorry. Villa Park has opted in officially. They've already gone through the entire planning process to opt in. Oak Brook is going to opt out. Naperville has opted out. Lombard is planning to opt in by all accounts. A number of other communities are purely researching it. Downers Grove is one of the communities still in the research phase. In terms of actually bordering communities, I don't believe anybody has taken any official action at this time, but a number of communities in the area, almost every significant community is taking some step to consider it in some direction thereof.
Anyone else? Yes?
Appreciate you getting this on the agenda sooner rather than later, getting it out in front of us. There's a lot of research that needs to be done, a lot of questions that need to be asked to make the determination to see if it's the correct fit for Burbridge or not.
Okay.
Thank you.
Tony?
When do we have to decide?
Well, by January 1st, we have to decide. But I would caution, I think that there'll be a lot of communities that will fight hard to get these businesses because of the revenue, because of the economic development opportunity. I think that, quite honestly, if any village takes too long in deciding, and then they decide they want to opt in, they may be already out because of the competition. I mean, to keep all options open, I think we have to act prudently, but we also have to act as quickly as we can, in my opinion.
One of the questions that I want answered, and I don't know the answer to this, and Trustee Schiappa and I were talking about this subject, and he also brought it up, is the banking relationship to the sales tax. The recreational use of marijuana, and of course medical marijuana is already legal, will be legal in Illinois. However, federally, it's still against the law, and many banks are struggling with what do we do with the deposits from the dispensaries or the cultivation systems because of federal regulations. So what does the state do when it collects the sales tax? Where does it put the money, and and how do we get it? I want to know the answers to some of these banking questions along with other things. It's still a problem, I know, in Colorado, where it's already been like 7 years since they legalized marijuana, and the banking industry is still it's not clear as to what happens. And this affects all the people that are in the industry. The person that's working at the dispensary or the cultivation, he or she, when they get their check, oftentimes they can't deposit it in a federally insured bank when that bank finds out its proceeds from a dispensary. So these are things we also want our residents to know about how the banking would work too. So, yes, Joe.
One more good question, Doug. When you said the average retail was going to do an average of $10 million, what size? Does it give like an idea of a size? Is it a small facility? Is it a? If you've got that knowledge already, it would be like, okay, how much space do you need to produce that amount?
Evan may have heard different numbers. The number I heard was 5,000 square feet.
Yeah, 5,000 square feet I hear is the average size for a projected retail store based on other states' usage. this type of thing. So the illegal limit you can possess is 30 grams, so it's about the size of a sandwich bag. It's a few $100s in that bag, so you don't need a lot of space to store a lot of valuable inventory. So this won't be a big box Target. It'll be a pretty smallish retail store. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Any other question?
Is there any research or information from other sister cities where they have these dispensaries and the effect on the communities, law and order? You know, how are has it had any change in the community since it was legalized?
Basically, what is the effect on communities and service calls and medical?
Right.
Like just in Illinois?
Maybe in Colorado, because
the laws are different, which is why I wanted to kind of contextualize the question. So in Illinois, a lot of the communities have said they have very few problems in medical dispensaries because medical dispensaries are extremely tightly regulated. You have to have an ID just to go in the door. You usually have to register to get your medical card just to get in the door. So if you tried to go to the one in Oak Park today, unless you had a medical card, you couldn't go inside. So if you can't even go inside, it's hard to cause trouble within that type of establishment. But since the retail is coming in, and it'll be more of a, as long as you're of age, you don't buy too much per se, there shouldn't be any issues. But again, the more access you have to things, there could definitely be effects of that sort of thing. So Illinois, just extremely, their medical program was actually a pilot program, started in 2013. So it was basically let's try this in a vacuum almost and go from there. But in the area, it seems to be very, very minimal in terms of actual calls.
or disruption to,
Not much by all accounts.
Okay. All right.
Trustee Batal, I'd like to add to that. We'll certainly follow up with more information on crime stats around medical facilities or perhaps in other states. I've had some conversations with others from other municipalities and also read the legislation. The legislation requires that a store, a cannabis store, have cameras throughout the property. And if the cameras aren't working, the store has to close. It also requires that ID cards be scanned. And if that's not working, the store has to close. There's lighting regulations. So it's quite detailed, and the security is very prominent in the legislation. But we'll look into that for you as we move forward.
So here's what I'd like, to the extent that any of you have questions, obviously please feed them into Doug or Evan so that we can start getting the answers for you. I say the same thing to the public. Those of you that have questions, no question is a bad question. Please get them in to the village, Doug or Evan, so that we can start understanding the concerns, pro, con, or whatever, from the village, and the same thing from the board. And I will tee this up again, not the next meeting, but a couple of meetings from now to have a further discussion. And at that time, I'm going to probably ask if we should have a public hearing or some kind of public forum on this, just so we understand what the residents of the village and what the board members want. So with that, unless anybody else wants to speak to this subject in the audience, okay, then we will move on. Item 9, public comment. Does anyone have any public comment on any issue he or she wishes to address to the board? All right, reports and communication from village officials. Any from any of the trustees? I had a couple of interesting things I want to know very quickly. Those of you, especially in law, know that Supreme Court Justice John Paul Stevens died at 99. I did not know, but discovered from staff that at the time that Justice Stevens was appointed to the U.S. Supreme Court in 1975, he lived here in Burr Ridge. His family, the Stevens family that owned the Hilton Hotel, we have a park here in Burr Ridge, Stevens Park. It's named after Judge Stevens.
Wow.
So a couple of other things about him. He was born and raised in Chicago. He was a Cub fan and was present for several World Series games was probably back at the wartime, because there weren't too many after that. He graduated from Northwestern, finishing first in his class. He served in the U.S. Navy in World War II from 1942 to 45. He was a lawyer, of course, judge, and Supreme Court justice, spanned a career of over 60 years, and he retired from the Supreme Court at age 90 in 2010. And so when you go by Stevens Park, which is at 85th and Waldron, remember it's for Supreme Court Justice Stevens, who was a Burr Ridge resident. Next, I'd like to congratulate another Burr Ridge resident, Peter Thornton, who also happens to be the father of our neighbor, Mike Thornton and Liz Thornton. He finished first. He was first to finish in this year's Mackinac race in the cruising division. So we have another compliment to people in Burr Ridge. I also want to note that there are some upcoming events. Friday's concert, Dancing Queen. By the way, we've had some decent weather recently. We've had some great concerts. So please come on out on Friday, August 2nd. Reckless, and that will be, that's the name of the band. And that night will be Village Employee Night. All village employees are invited and encouraged to attend. That'll be Friday night, August 2nd. And then on August 9th, the Millennials. That's the name of the band, but there'll probably be some Millennials there too. So please, that's I'm very proud. This village is very proud of Friday night concerts. So please come and have fun. Does anybody else have anything? Yes.
Yes. One thing I wanted to just came to my attention this afternoon. Earlier this year, our police and public works departments submitted some grant applications to the Cook County Department of Homeland Security and Emergency Management. As a result, the village has been awarded over $117,000 toward security projects in the village, 3 specific. 1 for Village Hall security upgrades, 2 for our water distribution security upgrades at our pump center, and 3 for water transmission main interconnection with West Suburban Water Commission. We'll get you more details as we proceed with these, and Public Works Director Dave Preissig and Deputy Chief Loftus are here if you have any questions tonight. The Village Hall security upgrades we were intending to leverage that with some Village Hall remodeling that we wanted to do anyway, that Mayor Grasso has asked me to look into to improve the public areas of the Village Hall, the lobby and the public restrooms. So we'll be incorporating all that into the security upgrades that we'll be looking at, and fortunately have some money from Cook County to help us with that. So thanks go completely to Dave Preissig and Mark Loftus and John Madden from the police department for obtaining these grants on behalf of the village.
It's good news. It's good. Any other reports, communications from village officials? All right, now, my understanding, we have items on the closed session on the agenda, but really, I don't believe we can go into closed session to vote on whether or not to destroy the verbatim recordings of closed session minutes for the period September 2015 through June 2017. We have the right under state law to do that, and it's routinely done. We maybe are a little behind in our own timing in this village, but there's nothing, we're allowed to do it, but it needs to be done in an open part of the meeting. So I'd like a motion to direct staff to prepare a resolution to destroy verbatim recordings of closed session minutes for the period of September 2015 through June 2017.
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion on that? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes. Now, do we need to go into closed session? Okay. So now I need a motion to go into closed session for the purpose of discussing the release of closed session minutes through December of 2018.
So moved.
Second. Let's do a roll call, please.
On the question, we need to note the section number of the Open Meetings Act is 5 ILCS 120 /2, paren C, paren 21. And that's pursuant to a requirement for municipality to twice annually review its closed meeting minutes.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Trustee Matal?
Yes.
Trustee Pavesa?
Yes.
Trustee Skiappa?
Yes.
Trustee Francis?
Yes.
Trustee Snyder?
Yes.
Trustee Model?
Yes.
6-0.
6-0, the motion passes. We are in